Hey everyone, welcome to Fedpreneurs Live. This is our live stream for the founders here today, and glad you could join us. And what we'll do is we'll start off by handing the mic over to Guy, say a couple words.
A couple words.
There you
It's
go.
not it's not my fault. Is that what we're looking for? So so it's a funny thing. And I'm gonna hand it back to Chuck to really kind of tell the story behind this, but this whole thing actually started with a meeting at Tower Club that was supposed to be breakfast. I think we ended up staying there 5 hours, 4 hours, something like that. And what ended up was I went into visionary mode, as I am notorious for doing, had some ideas. They resonated. And Chuck, tell them the story.
Okay, but before I do that, a little bit about us as a team. I had 36 years as a Fed, and I've been in private industry for about 10 years. And we launched Fedpreneur a little over a year ago, and it's been great so far. And we're excited to be here today. And with that, I'll hand the mic over to Laura.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. So I have more than 30 years service and I retired as a federal employee. And then I went on and I did a couple other really contract gigs. And so I learned a lot there too. I learned it from the other end. And so I have to say though, I've known Chuck for 30 years. So that's how I'm kind of involved in this. And I actually work for Chuck. And Chuck and I went to college together, so we know each other very well. I'm really happy to be here to be doing this because I like to ideate with this group of people as we, embark on this new venture and helping others that are leaving the federal workforce and getting into perhaps entrepreneurship or at least being very well aware of what's happening in the contract world. And I'll turn it over to Elaine.
Hello, I'm Elaine Steele. I had longer than any of these folks in the government when I retired. And I have been working for Chuck now for about almost 7 years, doing consulting. And I think this forum that we are on today is really cool. We have Guy Timberlake and Michelle Bull, who are from the American Small Business Coalition. Is that the word? Coalition. And they do a lot of training and working with people who are starting businesses that want to contract with the government. And Chuck is a small business that's grown. When I joined, it was like 30 some people, and now it's like 80 some people or more. And it's been a really neat ride and a neat thing to watch. And we, knowing what's going on with the feds right now, we're kind of excited to say, hey, here's ways to look at things. Here's a way to approach retirement or leaving the government or the military. There's lots of opportunities out there. And if we can help you in any way, we hope, that we will be able to. And I will now pass it over to, no, she doesn't want it, does she?
No, that's okay. I'll take it now. All good. All good. No, that was great, Elaine. So I'm Michelle Bull. I was government, not nearly as long as these guys. I had about 12 years in, left honestly to start a family. The job I was doing was very mission focused, a lot of deployment and just not conducive at the time. However, that was long enough for my heart to truly be just a part of mission. And so when I left, this is where I feel like I can relate to a lot of people when they leave. I had to find my sense of mission and purpose, and it was very challenging. So eventually I fell into government contracting as account management, BD, things like that, which I knew nothing about. I was a hands-on engineer. So talk about starting over. And then thankfully met Guy and the ASBC, and that definitely helped me learn the rules of the game and how to actually be effective and do the job correctly. And now I'm fortunate enough to be part of his team. So now I still get to support mission and support anybody that, on the mission side, the companies that want to do business with the government, helping them be effective in doing so. And now with Fedpreneur, helping anybody leaving government, leaving military, maybe navigating some of those same challenges that, Laura, Chuck, Elaine, and myself may have faced when we left. So with that, I'll throw it over to Guy now.
So I'm the lone non-Fed in this group here. The only person that didn't actually work for the government, but I've been supporting the government since I was 23 years old. And so working with the defense community, the intelligence community, and that's kind of where Michelle and I aligned. We didn't know each other back then, but we were working in more or less the same place. And as the story goes, when I stopped selling to the government, I started working with the companies that sell to the government, and that was the birth of the American Small Business Coalition. Along the journey, I ended up meeting a lot of interesting characters. One of them specifically, Sergeant Major Jack Tilley, who was the 12th Sergeant Major of the Army, had started an organization called American Freedom Foundation that works with transitioning military and veterans and so forth. So that was really my first taste, if you will, of what it was like to leave the government and make that transition. And then just through knowing other people over the years, meeting folks like, Michelle, Laura, Chuck, Elaine, people who had worked, for a career, quite honestly, in the government. I got to learn that side of it too. And that's where it made it really easy for Chuck and I to sit down that day at Tower Club and start kind of just really visioneering over something that was very much a passion of his, and being able to support people and give back. And it made it easy. The creative juices were flying. We started thinking up approaches. The name came very naturally. Literally, he looked up and bought the domain while we were sitting in Tower Club, looked up the organization to make sure it wasn't registered in the Commonwealth, and here we are.
Yeah, it's true. We had been COVID and all this time had passed, and Guy and I had been looking to catch up, and over breakfast, I mean, we were playing ideas off each other. And it starts, when I left the government, no one forced me out the door. I was wrestling with my project plan like anybody else and setting a date. And when I said, okay, I'm going to step out, and I was flying about 90 miles an hour, and then I came to a screeching halt, and it was kind of like, now what? And along the way, since launching a company that got us started with IT services and what we're doing, I started thinking, a couple years ago, like I'd love to give back at some point. Like, how do I do that? How should we go about that? And so that's kind of where the genesis of the idea came from. And of course, we're coming out of Fed, and, we're entrepreneurial. So it was a blend of that. And it was just amazing that the domain name was kind of like hiding in plain sight. And, a little tidbit out there, a lot of people think that I'm related to the author, and I do sign books at Christmas time. I will let the cat out of the bag. I'm not related to the Charles Dickens, but his birth date is actually a day before mine. So there's a few little coincidences here, but a lot of fun. But anyway, I think it's been great in kind of where we are and where we've gotten to now. And our goal is to not only look at people that are transitioning from government, whether it's, an unexpected transition or it's a planned transition, either retirement or not, and the same for the military. And we want to be able to provide opportunities and ways to help them. And there could be other people in industry who are looking to transition as well, in some way, and that factors in. And so it's wide open to everyone. And we were, talking earlier about, a lot of things that are tripping out there in the news right now.
Mhm.
And there's a number of articles, and we know the last 6 months has been, quite an exciting ride given the administration change and things that are going on. And it seems like every day you pick up, articles, and what you're hearing about is a lot of, reductions and Doge and other things that are going on. But I ran across one that was pretty interesting where there are some cases out there, and like in the case of FAA, for example, where they're actually increasing the size of their workforce. And I got to believe there's other areas as well where the workforce is increasing. I mean, it said in here that they're looking to um, cut a number of positions, but they're also talking about increasing the size and scope of FAA. And I'm sure there are other articles out there. I don't know. What do you think, Laura?
Yeah, so we actually went and, looked around. Uh, there's a lot of numbers being bandied about, and some of them sound, you know, and we've watched the news, and some of it is um, it's disheartening to see because it's our brethren, right? We came out of the federal government, and it's a little difficult to watch as these things transpire. But I think some of it is the media sometimes uses a lot of hyperbole, and so we look through some of these articles, and you need to make sure that you're getting the whole story and not just one side of the story. But nonetheless, they are downsizing in the government. And the article that Chuck talked about, there is actually, it says the workforce cuts in FY26. There's a nice little chart. And I think we're going to post all of anything we talk about today, we're going to post all the references. But you can really see, which part of the federal government is really going to be hit. And as we know, education was the number one that is the one that's taking the brunt of it. But across the board, it goes from 1% to 38% and everywhere in between. It's a really interesting chart to look at. But when you you have to peel the onion a little bit on this, and they're targeting particular, workforce specialties. So I think this is, it's interesting, and the article's interesting. I also found another one that right now the layoffs are resuming, and they're going to be targeting the National Archives. And there is some fear about what's going to happen to our retrieval. And it's really important that we have these sorts of services right at our fingertips, like we always have. So we're going to send out those articles so you can look at, and there's a whole lot more. But again, we right before we went on the air, we were talking about Chuck went into the office, and there's a lot of rumors and a lot of, I think people go to the darkest corner when things are happening. They don't, they can't, and it is very hard to be objective when it might be you that is on the RIF board. But I think that there is so much rumor mill. And we talked about the telephone game. So Chuck, do you want to go on about your experience there?
Yeah, you're spot on. I think, this is one thing where communication is so powerful, right? And people don't stop and think that, well, we're going to deliver the message to the workforce. And while they're pontificating that, for a few days, the workforce is already inventing its own message, what they think is going on. And by the time you tell that to two people and they tell that to two people and it gets down the telephone line, now you have a really distorted picture of what's going on. So I went in, a couple times there when this was kind of storming, and it was amazing the number of stories that people were coming up and telling me that's going to happen. And my first question was, well, can you send me what you got in writing? Of course, nobody had that in writing. And some staffers said to me that, oh, well, they're not writing things down. Well, if they're not writing things down, then what is the policy? What is the message? What's going on? So it was alarming, to say the least.
So
I feel like it's that, gee, your hair smells terrific. They told two friends, and they told two friends, and so on, and so on, and so on.
So what's interesting, one of the articles that I read was about OPM. And if you go out on their website, USA Jobs, they're still hiring. So it's not like they aren't hiring. They are. The other thing is, like, the Voice of America is rehiring 75 people with the Iran-Israel issues. And sometimes it's, this is painful. The way it's happening can be a bit ugly, but at the same time, it's not bad to look at what is our core mission? Are we still doing it? Are we focused on the right things? And so I think that where, some doors are closing, some others are opening. So it's not, I don't, in the end, I don't think the federal government is actually going to shrink that much total. It's just going to move things around so that they're in a better position to meet the missions of those organizations.
I was going to say there was another article that was talking CDC, maybe FAA, FDA. There were a few agencies that were actually rehiring some of the major RIFs. Because yes, maybe execution
Went a bit too far.
was questionable and may not have thought of all the downline impacts. But somewhere somebody is starting to clearly look at that, because there are some rehiring, hiring back of some of these critical elements. And so some of that, while excruciatingly painful and I'll say likely unnecessary to have gone through,
Yeah.
maybe some of it will kind of self-correct
starting to settle.
in the end too.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's starting to settle. I think some people are, some agencies are now, they've put a little more common sense on top of what's happening, and they are taking a more methodical look at it. And I also think the administration is open to that to some degree too. I think they just want to see change, and they also would like to save some money. But,
Yeah.
So.
At the end of the day, there's probably a lot of, we've done it this way for 20, 30, 40 years. And so there were people doing it that way for 20. Was it necessarily the most efficient, the most innovative, the best use of taxpayer dollars? In a lot of cases, probably not. So yes, I think across the board, people can say change was needed. Again, execution, So hopefully some of that's, settling out a little bit and in the end, getting where we really want to be.
Yeah, I think though, aren't they going to have to figure out how they're going to deal with the brain drain?
Yeah. Mission has to get done. Mission is paramount, and mission will get done. And, so if there's any silver lining, mission is going to get done. There is going to be work. There's always going to be work, because it will get done. Yeah. If not by staff people, it will be done by contractors.
Yeah. So, and speaking of that, that's actually one of the articles I pulled up. Was looking at govexec, and so a young lad I know in the business, Stan Soloway, who's been a fixture in federal contracting for years and years. Stan Soloway, if you don't know him, used to be the CEO of the Professional Services Council, and was also, prior to that, Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition Reform. It's kind of fitting, given what's going on right now. We're seeing some acquisition reform, and so Stan did an op-ed the other day, and was talking about the Defense Department's recent contracting directives are sweeping, but will they be successful? And it wasn't critical, it was questioning though. And what he talked about were the changes underway right now that are going to impact how contractors work with DoD. Right now, primarily two areas: advisory and assistance, and also IT. Now, the interesting thing was, Laura talking about the brain drain. One of the points that he makes in his piece is the fact for years, the government has been hemorrhaging people that would conduct effectively the services provided under advisory and assistance. And so if we're riffing people and we're crushing contracts, where does that knowledge come from? And so one of the things that I think, just like you all are talking about, agencies are starting to hire again, I think we're going to see some turnaround in this, where the agencies are going to start hiring contractors again. And they're going to start doing business in these areas that were at least initially taboo for whatever reason. But again, mission, it's got to get done. The work's got to get done. We need the knowledge and the skills to be able to get these things done.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And that brings us to the myth, and we've kind of hit on it a little bit here. We have a few myths we want to kind of debunk out there, and one of them is the government's has halted hiring. A lot of the agencies are still continuing to hire. It's the pace has slowed down. We got to think about what's going on with the Budget Reconciliation Act that's kind of in churn at the moment. And then when you look at that, and agencies are trying to figure out their budgets, I think that we could see, some staff hiring get turned back on, but in the meantime, they're going to deal with this loss and then try to figure out, what they're going to do about augmenting it with contractors. You're still going to need government staff in there, to oversee and manage the contracts. And then I read something where they were talking about contract review across all agencies and departments, and I'm not sure where they are on that. And that, again, a huge undertaking. But, the myth that government is halting hiring, I mean, probably has been, they have halted in recent months with the new administration, but we know they're cranking up the hiring wheels out there.
Yes.
So another myth that so again, this is myth busting, right? So another myth that we have discussed amongst ourselves that we want to make sure that you're all aware of is that the contractors are being affected more harshly because they're cutting contracts, they're issuing stop work orders, and that's the myth. The reality is, of course, contractors face uncertainty, and you do anyway. It just
Yep.
as part of this is what is it? The breaks of doing business, right? This is the breaks of doing business with the government in really doing business with anyone with a contract. They can end the contract. They can run out of money. The government has implemented a lot of measures to ensure that they have all the timelines and the money and the funding is all in place to ensure that the contracts go forward. So I think we have the source on this, but again, it's good news if you are going to be joining any contracting organization or your own. There's good news in this because again, the government already has measures in place to ensure that the mission, particularly the mission contracts, they get done. They have already set aside the money and there's work. I mean, there is a lot of work to be done, as we all know.
So one of the things, just kind of ad-libbing this for a second, that came out of a recent gathering we had with one of our masterminds. And it was something that had not come top of mind for me initially. And as soon as I heard it, it was kind of like, dang it, I should have thought of that. Um, so we had two gentlemen join us, one a former Fed, one a current Fed. And the point that they both brought to light was the fact that there's kind of a leveling of the playing field right now for a lot of people. If you think about it, so there's a good news, bad news that works both ways. So the good news is if you are newer to federal contracting, a lot of the relationships that a lot of companies may have had that may have been institutional may be gone or diminished now. And there are people going into those roles that don't have a necessary favorite or go-to organization just yet. So good news for you is it's leveled. The bad news, if you're already in here, is you got to go start over and just establish more. Hopefully, you still have somewhat of an edge. But this is actually, I hate using this word, but it really is kind of a reckoning, as it were, in the federal space. That again, whatever you think about, what's going on, everyone has a right to believe and feel the way they do about what's going on. But the fact of the matter is it's here. And it's happening. And whether you are transitioning from the government or you are working with the government, your choice is to take action and to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to come as a result of these actions.
I was just thinking too, with this, exodus of either by voluntarily leaving the government or those, where cuts are happening and they're faced with no option other than what they do next. It's going to leave a lot of holes in these agencies and departments where you're not going to have that historical knowledge, and you've got a younger, fewer years of experience workforce sort of in place leading the organization, being pushed up into, new roles of responsibility. They're going to be relying on a lot of, folks that have the seasoning and background and been in, and been in government and been in industry for a number of years, for counsel. So we're going to start seeing a lot of, it's not unusual today to get called in by somebody saying, "Hey, come in and close the door. Back in the day when you were doing this, how did you handle this particular scenario?" And I think we're going to get and see a lot more of that happening with, we have a workforce that has far fewer years than you would expect at this point in time, given the sort of natural attrition that's happened in the past. So,
Yeah, I mean, you look at, organizations like Partnership for Public Service has a program they call SAGE, Senior Advisor to Government Executives. And I've had a number of folks that I've known over the years, Pete Saronis, Henry Sienkiewicz and others who came out of government and went back as SAGEs to, folks in government. Well, guess what? There's a lot more vendors than there are SAGEs. And so again, if you are bringing that institutional knowledge in, that can help an organization get things done quick, fast, in a hurry, and really, really well, they're going to be dependent. They're going to rely on you to whatever extent.
So I just have a little quick story about that. I was hired in the 80s, and there was a big, a really long period of time where my particular career service, they did not hire for a long time. So when I was hired, we came in, there was no middle. There was a top, and then there was us at the bottom, but there was no middle. And how we learned was through the contractors that is how we learned war stories, how we learned the ropes, how we learned about equipment, how we learned how to do things. It was all of the contractors. They were the ones that guided us, that showed us how to do things, because there was nobody else. And this could potentially happen again. And, one of us will be one of them that kind of guides these younger and junior people, through their career. But I still love all the guys that I work with way back when. I know all their names. I know where they're at, because they were so incredibly helpful and instrumental in my career. And it was a lot of storytelling, and
yeah.
storytelling is really powerful. And on how you teach. If you can weave a story in there, it's even better. So anyway, I wanted just to mention that.
Yeah, Laura, I actually love that example, because one of the things that's come up in conversation just kind of throughout these last 6 months, no, we've never seen exactly this play out, like exactly this way, but the government has gone through its waves where the impact, the end result is kind of the same, kind of to your example. That was back in the 80s, and you still had to kind of overcome this similar situation. We've had rifts, we've had layoffs, we've had massive shifts in focus, one administration to another, high DOD, not high DOD, high healthcare, not high healthcare. We've had these ebbs and flows. We've just gotten there a different way this time. So, this isn't 100% as new as people think it is, kind of to that kind of sort of myth. And by the same token, the way, yes, we're talking about new rules, we're talking about new changes, all these things, but fundamentally, the way government does business and the way contractors are going to do business with the government, fundamentally, that's not really going to change. When Guy and I looked at, the first boot camp we did after the administration changed and all this stuff happened, we're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to have to go in there and change, as far as we're going to have to redo this, as far as what we're teaching people as to, how to do business development, how to do market research. And we went through everything and we looked at it, we said, we actually don't have to change anything. The conversation will be just a little bit different, but we actually did not have to change fundamentally anything, which was actually very eye-opening and very refreshing. Kind of that, oh, okay, when you talk about going into that dark corner, oh, okay, well, it kind of pulled us back out of the dark corner. Like, oh, okay, wait a minute. There's a little bit, there's more the same than isn't. So anyway, just building on that a little.
Very, very good point, because So, change. And yes, when it's happening to you, especially if it feels negative or if it's sudden, you're going to grieve it. You're going to be unhappy. You're going to be in that dark corner. But it is also an opportunity. And I was just thinking, Laura's story was interesting because at one point I was running our agency's financial systems, and it turned out the worst thing was all of our budget people rotate every 2 years, no matter what. They go. And they
Get promoted.
and they just moved them every 2 years to some other business area. And so when they came through the core financial systems, often they didn't actually know much about them. And it was the contractors who were teaching them how to do the stuff in the financial systems because they were the consistent piece. So that then, in fact, then what the opportunity that was kind of painful at the time, I think this was 2013, and Obama was changing some stuff up, and we had a bit of a freeze, in government for a bit. We shut down, and we learned an awful lot about what our contractors did for us, and maybe especially because we were also doing a contract recompete, was this really a good time to do this? And oh, by the way, maybe we need these staffers to step up a little more, and we had to relook at how this is all, shifting. So sometimes it's an opportunity that you didn't realize you needed. So it's kind of.
I think the real big shock to the system is something that we on the industry side have complained about for years and years, and that is the speed of government. We have always talked about the speed of government.
Hurry up and wait.
Right, exactly.
It's an iceberg moving.
It's the difference between, a PT boat making a U-turn and an aircraft carrier making a U-turn. I mean, it's two different things. And what we're seeing is the PT boat. Right now, we're seeing just massive, and very, very fast change. And I think that has been the biggest aspect of the disruption for a lot of us.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But when you all were talking about, folks leaving and, talking about where contracts are now, I mean, what we keep hearing, the next myth is that the Trump administration is going to require that all contracting be processed through the General Services Administration multi-award schedule system. So I just think that's a bridge too far. And I know we chatted about this before a little bit, but the amount of contracting that's going on in government to have that go through GSA, I mean, they're just not staffed. I mean,
Right.
it's crazy.
Well, and there's two elements to that. There's just the fact that it's going to GSA. Too many people think that automatically means the schedule. In no way, shape, or form does that automatically mean the schedule. So two pieces. No, not all of it is going to GSA. It might become a much bigger piece, but that doesn't mean the schedule. And, for anybody listening to this, please be very careful listening to all the supposed experts out there telling you that you need to go get a schedule. Validate that, verify that for you. It might be good for you. It might not be.
Right.
But there are a lot of people kind of like taking advantage of the fear, and just make sure that for you and your offering and your customer that it's true. But in no way, shape, or form does that shift to GSA automatically mean the schedule. And I know, Guy, you've been like talking to all the experts and talking to the truly people in the know. So I'm going to let you really expand on what the nitty gritty of that is.
Sure. I'm gonna beg forgiveness from everyone that's on here with me and also watching this too. That I'm gonna absolutely nerd out now, because this is the part, as I sit back and I hear these things and I see the kind of the reactions of folks out there, government and industry. I'm trying to figure out how you got there. And so while the GSA schedule is synonymous with GSA because that's who issues it and administers it, I mean, look, the GSA schedule, the multiple award schedule that was born as the federal supply schedule. And for anyone that doesn't know, there is still a federal supply schedule in existence being run by the VA right now, that GSA delegated authority to many, many years ago. So there is still a federal supply schedule. But when you look at the numbers alone for actual dollars to a GSA multiple award schedule, last fiscal year was $52 billion. Now, let's do the math. The government obligated $760 billion. So the schedule by itself accounted for less than 10%. And so two things are happening. We have the executive order that said GSA is going to go back to their mission of being the primary buyer. Sweet. Okay. Makes sense. So what does that mean? Last year, the U.S. government obligated under common goods and services. For anyone that doesn't know, those are the top 10 categories of the 19 categories that make up the category management methodology. That was almost $500 billion obligated there.
Hmm.
Again, the GSA schedule was $52 billion. Now, GSA as an organization only obligated $28 billion last year, and only $8 billion of that was their money. Everything else came in through a delegation of some sort. So for us to think that GSA, even going and hiring all the other contracting officers from all the agencies that were riffed earlier or took a deferred resignation to come back in, there's no way that it's going to happen in any good form by the fiscal year end for this year, first of all, or even by the middle of next year, quite honestly, to go from, well, basically to go 10x spending under the common goods and services. But the last part I'll finish with is this: for everyone that thinks that this all means GSA schedule, understand the limitations of a multiple award schedule. It is limited to commercial goods and services. Not everything in the common goods and services categories is commercial. Hence, construction under the facilities and construction category. And so you need to sit back and take a breath and talk to people that know. I personally talked to my friend Courtney Fairchild of Global Services and others like her. I talked to people that worked at GSA in the past, in FAS and the former FSS, and they've all given me this foundation to understand that yes, maybe eventually GSA will earn the role of primary buyer and be doing all these things, but functionally, operationally doing that is going to take a long time, and it's not this fiscal year and probably not even next fiscal year.
I just find that knowing that we're dealing with contracts and we make that somebody makes a statement that it's going to shift one way or the other, and we all have firsthand experience with how slow things are in government. It just doesn't strike me that it's going to happen, anything's going to happen quickly or in the volume that people are stirring up the rumor mill out there with. So,
well, the funny part for me is, and so the whole thing about category management, one, there's a lot of people finding out about category management for the first time. It's been around since 2012. Just saying. All right. So there's that part. But the other part is literally just understanding what it means in the big picture. And so again, the common goods and services is where most of the money is spent. And out of the $500 billion last year, DoD obligated $400 billion of it. And so again, how much is DoD going to keep on their own because of their unique mission, their unique approach to doing things? And so the last part about it is this. So the best in class contracts, for everyone that's hearing about, again, category management for the first time, there are over 40 best in class contracts right now across the 10 common goods and services categories. The GSA schedule represents one of those, and most of them are managed by GSA. So think about it logically. Is GSA really going to cancel all of its own contract vehicles simply to try and put them under the multiple award schedule? Probably not.
I don't think so. I don't think so at all.
That's a
No,
big lift.
there's no reason. It's all still GSA. So even to say it's all transitioning to GSA, that's still theirs. Why on earth would they undo all of that. They're going to be scrambling enough for new things coming in
Mhm.
Right.
and having to deal with that. There's zero reason to eliminate the ones they already have. If anything, all of the ones they have will kind of gain some extra momentum, and then maybe they'll add some new things,
Sure.
new contracts, new vehicles. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, again, GSA may become the center of the universe for procurement. Um, what that means is it gets a little bit easier. We don't have to worry about so many different buying activities. You know, I think it was roughly, what is it, 3,000 or so we counted from last year, Michelle.
Mm.
But what is not going to change is the proportion of customers that are out there. So even with the downsizing of different agencies and so forth, it's literally a 5-to-1 ratio of customer activities at the office level to contracting activities at the office level. If we get rid of all the other common goods and services buying at all the agencies, let's say it reduces everything down to 1,000 contracting offices in government. So that's a, 66% reduction, in contracting offices. I don't see that kind of reduction happening on the customer side. So they're going to be overwhelmed even more than they already are. And so all that said, I just, the advice I'll give everyone is this: on the contracting side, chill, just chill and wait until you hear things, because GSA, they've rolled out their one gov strategy, which is not even a strategy yet. It's a concept. There is nothing, there's no documents made yet that says what they're going to do or how they're going to do it. So there's a long way to go for getting those things done. But I'm going to stop now because I'll start hyperventilating any second. But
But Michelle made a great point. And that is, for people out there that are paying attention to what's going on in the news and they think that, oh my God, if I don't get a GSA scheduled contract, I'm not going to be able to contract with the government. And you just said, take a chill. I think that, to Michelle's point, if you're, regardless of what's going on in the news, if you feel that you need a GSA schedule, or you want a GSA schedule, know why you want to do it. What is
Exactly.
your strategy? And how does that play in that? And then what we can offer are resources that we can provide to you that will point you to reputable parties that can help you with the GSA schedule, because there's a million of them out there that says sign up today and get your GSA schedule and you'll be a multi-billionaire within a matter of a couple of years.
right,
It's just,
months, Chuck, months.
false
Right,
information. Yeah, false information. So
exactly.
just know, I think to Michelle's point, know why you want to do this. That's really important. And in talking about resources for people to go to with all the transition that's going on, whether it's in the federal sector or it's or on the military side, as I was looking through sort of, resetting and seeing, where are the available resources for people to go to, I think one place that's often overlooked is OPM.
Mhm.
So if you go to OPM, to the CTAP, the what they call the Career Transition Assistance Plan site, and you can get to it through OPM or just Google it. They offer a tremendous amount of information. It's not just people who are retiring, but people who are making, either a voluntary or involuntary transition. Take a look and make sure that you're getting those things and the help that you need as you begin to do that. And the other one is through the military one source transition services. So they have a great website and phone number you can call as well, and we'll provide this information to you. But there's just two sort of basic areas that you can go to for help. And if we talk about things here today or we leave something out that you're interested in, please contact us and we'll be able to help you, because if we don't have the answer, we know others that do. So
Yep.
Mm.
how about some other resource ideas?
Yeah,
So
kind of related. I'll just mention, just because it was kind of related to what Chuck was talking about. I was surprised, not surprised just because I didn't know about it after all these years. Federal Employee Education Assistance Fund. Their website actually had what I thought was a great combination of things. The top bar was actually self-care. And just knowing how I felt when I came out, and especially now people who are especially in this involuntary situation, those are probably some critical links that are good to have up there. But then below that, there were some nationwide national resources. There were also the links to some of the state efforts in helping people transition. I mean, here in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia, I mean, obviously workforce is drastically impacted. And I know both states have really built some massive initiatives, and we'll put the links to those on our website. But this page also had links to those. So they have it to state initiatives, they have it to national initiatives, job search links, things like that. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for a very well-rounded set of resources, which I thought was kind of nice. Sorry, Guy, I think I talked over you.
Yeah, one of the things that I've heard and listened to with all of you and lots of others, speaking of that self-care, is how you guys felt when you separated, from government. And I mean, Michelle and I have known each other, almost 20 years now. I mean, I know her story just by proxy of being with her, and all the things that we've done together, through ASBC even before that. And so it was one of those things. I mean, my dad was a Fed, Health and Human Services for years and years. I never had a chance to talk to him about how he felt, when he separated from government when he retired. But I mean, Chuck and I have talked about it. Michelle and I have talked about it. I've heard, Elaine and Laura talk about it. And being now very active in the military community, I've heard a lot of that also relative to what it feels like and not having your team anymore, your network. Chuck, you talked about being able to go to a certain part of the building and, and hang out with people. And it means a lot. And so the two sources I wanted to talk about, I think are ones that are really, really germane to the military. I have to believe that there are ones like this on the civilian side too. For the last 10 years, I've been a director with the American Freedom Foundation that was founded by SMA Jack Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major of the U.S. Army. And one of his fantastic resources is called Your Next Mission. You can get to the website, yournextmission.org, and it's literally, it's a program by the AFF that provides digital and online content and resources for veterans, military service member, their families, and it gives you an opportunity to get insights on, creating opportunities for assistance in transition, addressing all the unique needs that veterans are faced with and their families are faced with all the time. So yournextmission.org is one of them. The other one is I am thankful and grateful to be an ambassador of the 2025 cohort for the Syracuse University Institute of Veterans and Military Families. And they have a phenomenal opportunity and program for transitioning military called O2O, or Onward to Opportunity. It is free career training that gives you professional certifications and employee support services for not only transitioning service members, but also veterans and military spouses. And if you go to IVMF, look it up in Google, it'll take you directly to their website and you can look up the Onward to Opportunity program.
Great. And then, okay, springboarding from that, as you start to get ready and you polish up your resume, there are free resources available. So ChatGPT, everyone's using it and it does all kinds of things, but it is really good. Contextually, it will help you, again, from a text perspective, get that resume up to scratch. The other free resource that you'll need in addition to ChatGPT is, it's called myperfectresume.com. And there's probably other ones, but that's the one I use. And it walks you through and it stylizes your resume and it does it for free. So these are just two like really quick tools that you can do it to get your resume up to speed. And even on My Perfect Resume, if you have a resume, you can feed it in and it will help you stylize it. And ChatGPT will help you prepare the resume for the job that you want. So, we kind of make them generic, but you really should focus on whatever the job is that you're going for. And then the second part of this is ChatGPT will also help you prepare for your interview. and it will do a mock interview with you. It will ask you questions. I have to say it's pretty impressive. I know there's a time limit because it's free, and there'll be a time limit that you will, today you get an hour and it will bounce questions, and then maybe tomorrow you'll get more time with it. But that's the only limit. You're a little bit limited on that, but it's free, and it will just help you think of things and help you polish how you respond to, sometimes there's a question that you did not anticipate. How do you don't want to be caught flat-footed. You got to be, ready to answer and have a good story behind that. And ChatGPT will help you do that. So we're going to put up these resources at the end. Again, we're going to have everything out there. But I think use AI. We're using it. It's designing something for me in my house right now. I'm waiting for the pictures to come in. But use AI to help you in your career. This is a new area, and we should take advantage of it. Let's work smarter, not harder. Okay, there you go.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit off of that, but kind of tying two things that were said between Laura and Michelle. The self-care piece, when I retired, I had a cooling off year too, and my mother had just died, and just life was, I felt high anxiety. I was a type A, I was out of the house at 4 something every morning, and I didn't get home till 8 or 9 at night most days. And, I just, wow, what do I do with me now? And where do I want to go? What do I want to be? What do I want to do? And that I found it took getting into some kind of a new routine, but being that type A person, of course, I ended up getting on the board of our country club and going back to work, but part-time, but decide what you really want to do. But there were some cool resources that people don't always think of, and they also may think they don't have the skills to do certain things. Like using AI is scary for a lot of people, especially if they're not really computer literate. And there's still a lot of people out there whose work didn't actually involve a whole lot of time online. So they're afraid. But if you go to your public library, believe it or not, almost every public library has free resources that will teach you some basic computer skill classes, and they're not all online. Some of them are in-person classes. So you can go and have someone show you how to navigate what's going on. So those are, there's also all kinds of things. Like if you wanted to totally explore a brand new career, like, maybe you want to go back and be a doctor, who knows? But you could kind of do some exploration. There's tools out there that you can use to kind of see where your interests are. Not everybody wants to go back to work with the government, for the government, or, or for a big company. Maybe they just want to start a little something. And that's where like the Small Business Administration and community colleges have a lot of programs, and things like the University of Maryland Global Campus. There are all kinds of options out there. Some of them cost money, some of them don't. Some of them can be done part-time, but you can go off in a whole new direction. So it's like an opportunity to think that way. And everybody thinks, some people when they're retiring think they're just going to enjoy the beach or golf or whatever. But after a while, as fun as all that is, and I like to golf and go to the beach, it's not enough. You want a little more. And so, that's why it's kind of nice to know there's a lot of resources out there that you can explore. There's job training. LinkedIn has a lot of resources, and even if you just put your resume out there, you'll be surprised who might call you and say, hey, I've got this opportunity. And so again, if you put your resume out there, you might find somebody opening a door you didn't expect. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on that.
Those are great.
I think we covered all bases there. What do you all think?
I think so. I think just on a wrap up piece, we just want to make sure that we are going to post all of this information, because we did, collate some of the information, and we'll have it available. We'll post it with the link to this podcast, and so that you can see and get easy access to the links.
Yeah, I think we'll be doing another one of these soon. So stay tuned, keep tuned in on our events page and keep a watch out for announcements on LinkedIn as well.
And tell us what you like. Tell us what you heard, what was helpful, what would be helpful. You've got a range of experiences here from in and around the federal sector. And there's even more folks that we can bring into the table. Maybe we'll have guests in with us next time and get Michelle off the hook. No, and so let us know because we want to be able to provide good information for everyone right now that is, in transition, again, voluntarily or otherwise, that is looking for next thing, or especially those that are already out here that can help. If you've got, some knowledge, you've got a kind word, some words of encouragement to help someone that's going through, a challenge right now. The one thing again that I'll say that I've learned about is, not everyone separating from the government is ready to separate from the government. And so there are going to be a lot of people right now that need help, and you just might be that person to be able to give them a little glimmer of hope.
It's a good
Yeah.
point. It's a good point.
Amen.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you joining the call today. And we'll put this recording out on our website as well. And thanks to the panel here, the founders panel, for presenting and covering these topics. And we look forward to seeing everyone at the next event.
Let's do it again.